Welcome. Tonight we're making creamy tomato basil soup. One of my ultimate favorites. It's amazing, and I know you guys are going to love it. Right now, we're going to do the onion, carrot, and celery. Before we get started at the stovetop, what I always tell people to do is not only get familiar with the ingredient list. Obviously, you have to do that because you have to do your shopping, but also get familiar with the instructions below. It's going to help you with your prep. So, for example, you'll see in step number 1, that all together at one time, we're going to add the onion, carrot, celery, basil, salt, and pepper to the pot. So that tells me that you can prep that whole thing together in one bowl if you want to. So get a bowl standing by, and we will start with the carrot. Now, there's a little bit of explaining to do in the recipe. If you look at step number 3, we're going to puree the soup. Okay, we're going to puree it completely. So you might think when you get the onion, carrot, celery, and I say dice small, you might think, well, there's no sense dicing it really small. It's going to puree it anyway. Here's the thing. When you follow the recipe, step number 1, you heat a pot over medium heat. You're going to add the oil and the butter. Once the butter is foaming, you're going to add the onion, carrot, celery, basil, salt, and pepper. Stir together. Cover and cook for 2 to 3 minutes until the vegetables are somewhat soft. Step number 2, we're going to stir in the tomato paste, followed by the diced tomatoes and the vegetable broth, bring to a full boil, and then simmer uncovered for approximately 3 to 5 minutes until the vegetables are soft. Step number 3 is puree. So if you cut this hard carrot, for example, into big chunks, it's not going to be cooked all the way through by the time you hit step 1 and step 2, because that's a total of maximum 8 minutes. So you want to make sure you follow what I say in the recipe, dice this small. And I'll show you the best way to go about this. So I'm going for like about a 1/4 inch dice, okay? And we want to get rid of that gross end. Look at that, all the dirt and stuff in there. And same with this one, gets all cracked and dirt in there. Look at that, it's gross, right? So let's cut off those 2 ends. Let's get that carrot. Now it says a medium carrot, and I also provided you the measurements of the small dice. So a medium carrot will be about 1/2 cup, and the celery will be about 1/2 cup as well. This carrot is actually quite large. Look at this, it's bigger than my head, right? So I'm gonna have more than 1/2 cup. So we're gonna actually stop when we get to that 1/2 cup. So I'm gonna have a 1/2 cup measure standing by. Now I do wanna tell you on that note that you don't have to be that particular and stay exactly at what I say. If it's a little bit over or a little bit under, that's fine. But here's what I don't want you to do, okay? Look at the title of this soup. It's called Creamy Tomato Basil Soup. This is not called creamy carrot, celery, tomato, basil soup, right? So this Mirepoix, that's what we call it, a combination of flavors of carrot, celery, and onion. It's called a Mirepoix. It's there to add a complex flavor base to this, okay? It's there to be supporting roles of the tomato and the basil to make this soup really shine and just have it tons of character. We don't want to go like 2 cups worth of diced carrot in there, because then it's going to start tasting like carrot, or 2 cups of diced celery. It's going to start tasting more like celery. So your typical ratio for a Mirepoix should always be 2 parts onion, 1 part carrot, 1 part celery. So the volume of your carrot and celery should always equal the volume of onion. And we don't always have to follow that, but in this recipe, I do want you to pay sort of close attention to that. And like I say, a little bit over or under is fine. Just don't go volumes over, okay? Let's get on this. So we're gonna take this carrot, just to break it down. First of all, it's round and it's long. We wanna get this into workable chunks so we can get our small dice. So I make 2 cuts, okay, to get this into 3 pieces. Then I start with one of those pieces, and because it's round, I want to cut it in half so it can sit nice and flat on the board, all right? So hold it and then cut it in half so it can sit nice and flat on the board, all right? We can do that with a couple pieces for sure. Once you have those pieces that are laying flat, take one of them and you're going to make 1/4 inch slices in that carrot. Then you're going to take those slices and you're going to make 1/4 inch strips like that, like little tiny matchsticks. And let's do a whole bunch of those. And then what I want you to do is line those up once you have a few, and just make small dice out of those matchsticks. And then take those small dice and start filling your measuring cup. We got a 1/2 cup measure again for these carrot. And I'll just keep filling that 1/2 cup measure until we are full. So there's my 1/2 cup measure. I'm going to get that bowl. I'm going to dump it in there. I'm going to move on to the celery. Same thing. Gross cracked ends, cut those off. Get rid of them. We have a long vegetable, so we're going to break that down into 3 pieces by cutting it twice. And then we're going to, right away, because of the shape of the celery, we're just going to cut those strips right off there, okay? And it's softer, so we don't have to be too meticulous with the celery as we did the carrot to make sure they're small. So cut your strips, turn them, and make your small dice. Get my half cup measure. Wow, I can just smell that beautiful cut celery. It's just amazing what that does in a mirepoix to add extra flavor in there. There's my half cup measure going in my bowl with my carrot. We're going to move on to the onion next. What we're going to do is we're going to cut off this hairy bit. We don't need that hairy bit on the onion, and we don't need that stem bit. We're going to cut that off as well. So let's get rid of the two ends that we don't need. Let's cut them off so it can sit nice and flat now on our board, all right? Once it's sitting flat on the board, I want you to cut it in half. And now I want you to peel it. It's almost peeling it by itself. Look at that. So just take it now and get that peel off there. We don't need the peel, obviously, so now's our chance to get rid of it. It's a little bit easier to peel it once it's cut in half. I've got a 1 cup measure standing by here. Parallel to those cuts that you made on the top and the bottom, I want you to make slices, 1/4 inch slices all the way down, okay? And here's the thing. I want you to try and keep that half onion shape. So when you make a slice, hold the onion where you cut it on both sides and take your knife out. You make the next slice, hold it right there where you cut it. Don't put your finger on the end here like this. Put it right here where you cut it. And that way it's going to hold the slice close to the onion. So it'll maintain that half onion shape right until the last cut. And that's important. And I'll show you why in the next step. We're now going to turn it a 1/4 turn. And because an onion has layers, we're going to dice it this way by working the curvature of the onion. See that? And the whole thing will just dice small. Here's one more thing I'm going to show you. When it's more vertical than horizontal, and you're like, whoa, it's all wobbly stuff, you're going to cut your fingers off. Just lay it down and then cut, and right to the very last cut, it's standing up. You don't even need to get your fingers in there. And you will dice your onion really, really fast. Let's get that 1 cup measure. Let's do the other half. I'm just going to do my 1 cup. I'm going to add that to my bowl. There's my ratio of my mirepoix. So 2 parts onion, 1 part celery, 1 part carrot. And I'm going to go and put that by the stovetop. You guys ready? We're going to move you over to the stovetop here. Get this going on, folks. Turn your pots on medium heat, please. Step number 1, heat a large pot over medium heat. We're just going to let that heat up. Now, the first couple of ingredients we have on the list is the oil and the butter. So what we want to do is once that's preheated, we're going to add the oil first, and then we're going to add the butter. So let's put that oil in there, the olive oil. So 1 tablespoon of olive oil, and then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of the butter. What we're looking for, it says right there, heat a large pot over medium heat, add the oil and butter. We've done that. Once the butter is foaming, add the onion, carrot, celery, dry basil, salt, and pepper. Once it's completely melted and it's foaming, okay, see that? Foaming in the pot, that tells us that our pot is hot enough to melt and foam the butter. We can go on to the next step, which is, well, still the same step, but go on to the next ingredients. Adding the onion, carrot, and celery. You can hear that sizzle there. So let's get all that in there, onion, carrot, celery. To that, we're going to add the 1 tablespoon of dry basil, the 2 teaspoons of salt, and the ½ teaspoon of ground black pepper. Now, I want you to give that a good stir. You want all those vegetables coated with that salt. It's really, really important. What that salt's going to do is going to start extracting some juices from those vegetables. And then it says, stir together, then cover and cook for 2 to 3 minutes until the vegetables are somewhat soft. So I'm going to look at that. It's all dripping back down in there, showing you that we are trapping that moisture in there. We're going to move on to step 2. Get that can of tomato paste, get a nice long spatula like that, and get the whole thing in there. And that's going to incorporate in with that mirepoix a lot faster than when you had a whole bunch of liquid in there. So the heat is at medium. It does not say in the recipe to change the heat from the step number 1. So we just keep it at medium, okay? Followed by the diced tomatoes, juice and all. So the whole can of diced tomatoes is going in the pot. Look at this. Okay, juice and all, everything. And the vegetable broth. So our good 900 ml Tetra Pak of vegetable broth. If you made your own vegetable broth, that's fantastic. Just measure out 900 mils. 900 ml vegetable broth. So we're making a nice vegetarian soup. If you wanted to add chicken broth, you could do that, but you really don't need to. You could have this on Meatless Monday. Give that a good stir. And then it says, bring to a full boil. Here's what I want you to do. Put it on high and bring it to a full boil. You could just leave it at the medium heat and eventually it'll come to a full boil, but you're going to be waiting a long time. And what we want to do is we want to get the pot at an even temperature before we start timing the next section, which says bring to a full boil and simmer uncovered for approximately 3 to 5 minutes. So by bringing it to a full boil first, I know as the recipe writer that you're going to have success. Because by bringing it to a full boil, that's telling you that that soup is going to be 100 degrees Celsius. And then you're going to simmer for 3.5 minutes. And I know by that point, as long as you have small cuts of your vegetables, all the vegetables will be fully cooked. And that will lead us into step 3, which is the pureeing. I'm just starting to come to a full boil here. I'm going to turn my heat down, whatever I have to turn it to make a simmer, which is just the odd little bubble. And I'm just getting some bubbles on the surface now a little bit, and it's going to maintain that, so I'm happy. I want you to do the same and set your timer. You might as well set your timer for the full 5 minutes. We have our basil to prep, and we'll come back to that. Let's grab our basil, shall we? So you saw in the recipe that we already put some dry basil in there. Dry herbs need to be put in at the beginning of a cooking process, okay? Because they really need that rehydration in order for them to release their flavor. However, the flavor you're gonna get from dry basil is not the same as what you're gonna get from fresh basil. Fresh basil has a different flavor because you're gonna capture the essential oils that are still intact with this fresh basil. When you dry herbs, you lose those essential oils. You really do. You're still gonna have some flavor once it rehydrates in that pot, which is doing now, but it's not going to be the same as this flavor. So we want to attack this soup from 2 areas of having this taste like basil. At the very end, just before serving, we're going to stir in a 1/4 cup of chopped basil. And then we're also going to chop some more for garnish at the end of the soup. Very important to garnish. But I want to show you this cutting technique. It's called a chiffonade cut. So what I want you to do with your fresh basil, take the leaves off the stems, okay? Put them on your board. So I have a whole bunch of leaves here. Hopefully you guys have the same. I'm gonna make 2 stacks, okay? But really you just need to make a stack if you want to. If you wanna make 2, if you have lots. And what you wanna do is take the bigger leaves and put them on the bottom of your stacks. And put the medium ones next, and then put the smallest ones on top. I'll show you this here. So these last little tiny leaves like that, I just scrunched them all together and just place them on top of my stack. Now, what I want you to do is to roll this into a tight cigar shape like this. And roll it like that, and then I want you to slice it. And the reason why we do this with basil bruises really, really easily. So watch this. We're gonna take that cigar, hold it as tight as we can, and as thin as you possibly can, slice it. Don't go back and re-chop it all. Here's the thing, basil bruises very, very easily, and you're going to not only mar the appearance, but you're going to mar the flavor somewhat as well. So just once with a knife, we'll give you these nice ribbons of basil that you can put in your soup. I'm taking my basil now. I'm gonna measure a 1/4 cup. And when you measure it, you're not packing it in, okay? You're just placing it in there. So we just want like a loose 1/4 cup of chopped basil that we're gonna add to the soup. But we need some more for garnish now too. So I'm gonna do this one more time with the leftover basil leaves that I have here. Great, you guys are happy, I'm happy. All right, let's set those 2 things aside. Let's get rid of that board and that knife. We don't need that anymore. And if you're ready, and I'm ready, we're all gonna join hands and sing Kumbaya right now. I'm gonna be using a hand immersion blender. Here's the thing, we're making a tomato basil soup, right? I don't want to have chunks of celery, carrot, onion in there. I don't want to have the big chunks of it. So let's go ahead, okay? And you want to try and get it as pureed as much as you can, okay? Get rid of all those chunks as much as you possibly can. So do it more than you think. All right, this is looking so good. Oh man, it smells so good too. Oh, you ain't saying nothing yet, baby. You wait. You wait. But I think I'm done. Now you notice at the top of the recipe, I give you a really good pro tip. For best results, I recommend grating real Parmigiano Reggiano for the 1 cup Parmesan cheese. Because we're making a tomato basil soup, it just has that Italian flair to it. That's what I recommend. Whatever Parmesan cheese you got, fantastic. I want you to do that. And we're going to stir in a full cup of that. That's going to give it incredible richness and incredible flavor. So let's put that in there. And again, we have not changed the heat from our simmer temperature. Remember that? If I wanted you to change the heat, I'll tell you in the recipe to do that. So the cheese is in there. The next thing we're going to go with is the 1 cup of whipping cream. Yes, this is a creamy tomato basil soup. So we need the creamy part. And then we're going to add the sugar, 2 tablespoons of sugar. We'll talk about that in a sec. And then stir it all together. Stir all those ingredients in. We want that cheese to melt and have all those flavors combined now and go together. All right, we have not added the basil. Don't add the basil yet. Warm through completely and then stir in the fresh basil just before serving. Now that we have the cheese in there, we have the cream in there, we definitely don't want to increase the heat to high and bring this to a full boil and burn it on the bottom. Don't do that. Don't do any of that stuff. We don't need it to be 100 degrees Celsius boiling temperature to serve it. We don't need that. We just want it warm through. So what we're looking for, and you'll see mine's doing it already, we're looking for these whiffs of steam to come off there, okay? That's telling us that it's warm through, okay? Because the whole thing is steaming. If you stir it, you'll see more steam coming off there. You can even taste it if you want to at this point, and just to see how hot it is, if it's a good serving temperature. Remember, we have not stirred in the basil yet, and that's going to change the flavor profile, okay? If you are sampling and you think it's missing something, don't worry, we're not finished yet. The sugar, 2 tablespoons of sugar, Des? What are you thinking, man? Here's the thing, okay? I get it. 2 tablespoons is a lot. However, tomatoes are very acidic. So normally we'll finish something like this, a soup, a stew, whatever, a sauce, with a little bit of sweetness to balance out the recipe. Because we used a full can of tomato paste and we used a full large can of diced tomatoes, that's a lot of acidity. You need that kind of sweetness in there in order to take off those sharp notes and allow you to appreciate all these flavors we got going on in here. When you're ready to serve this, we're gonna stir in the basil. So I'm gonna bring you to the countertop first. And what I want you to do now, if you're ready to serve, I want you to stir in the basil. Hang on 1 second. The lady had a good question, the 1 o'clock class. She said, well, hold on a minute. Like, you stirred in all that basil to the soup, and let's say I'm only portioning out, 2 or 3, and I'm putting the rest in the fridge. We're trying to capture those essential oils in that basil by stirring that in last. That's really what we're trying to do. And that's why we have that fresh basil at the end. Remember I talked to you about that? Dry herbs at the beginning, fresh herbs at the end, and fresh delicate herbs, that is, at the end. You wouldn't put woody rosemary in at the very end, okay? Just delicate ones like basil. And what we're trying to do is whenever you heat fresh plant-based material, you're going to create essential oils being released from that. And that's what we're really trying to capture in this eating experience. By me putting this fresh basil in the very beginning, it's going to be lost. All those essential oils are going to be gone. You might as well just use dry basil the whole time because it's not going to make much difference at all. You only portion out, let's say 2 or 3, like she was saying in the 1 o'clock class, and put the rest in the fridge, and then you're going to have the rest heated up the next day or something. Are you going to lose all that essential oils? Well, you are, but that's why we have extra basil to garnish with as well. So you're going to get an extra little burst of essential oils on every single bowl as you serve every single bowl as well. But for serving with the soup, we really need to get this in here. So let's just dump that 1/4 cup of basil into that soup, and we're just going to stir it around because we're ready to serve this. And that, if you put your nose in that right now and you smell that, wow, it just smells incredible. I'm going to lose that spoon now. I'm going to show you guys a little pro tip for serving soup or stew or whatever. Now, we've all been there, right? And I'm going to show you this against the black backdrop of my chef's jacket, right? We've all been there where we're dishing out soup and we got a trail of soup all the way down the pot, all the way down the countertop, on the table, whatever, right? Here's how you're going to not do that. So what I want you to do, grab your ladle of soup, not overflowing ladle, just to the top, but not overflowing. But you see this, look at my bottom of the ladle. See what's dripping there? If you go back and you touch it to the soup, the bottom of the ladle, and then bring it out, then you're not going to drip. Anywhere on the pot, anywhere on the table, the countertop, whatever. So again, ladle full, okay, not overflowing. You see how it's dripping there? Touch it to the soup, bring it out, and you won't drip anywhere. All right. I'm just going to create less messes and less waste. We have our beautiful tomato soup, and we're just going to give it a little burst of color and some essential oils by grabbing some of that extra Chiffonade basil that we have and just putting a little nest of it in the center. There you have it, creamy tomato basil soup. See you next time, folks.